Francis from Sassy Studios. Thanks for joining me. We're going to be doing a series today on creating images and the purpose and importance of the right kinds of images for your business or your service. So, we're going to start with the raw materials. So, I am an apple seller. Okay, so we sell apples. And we want to sell apples, we want to sell more apples, we want to sell apples to everybody. And we want them to eat them, we want them to enjoy them, and more than anything else, we want them to buy our apples and no one else's, or less of everybody else's, but just ours. So that's what we're aiming for. So the first thing we need to think about is who buys apples? You could say we all buy apples, but do we really? Predominantly, you'll find within that particular scenario, you have apples being bought by mums doing shopping. Not to be sexist, I know that's a really difficult topic right now, I'm not being sexist, but statistics show that it's mums predominantly that do all the shopping. Now, speaking as a single dad, I do shopping, but we are somewhat in the minority. So it's predominantly mums who buy apples. So they're kind of the ones that we need to be talking to. We could talk to the other people as well, but one thing about marketing and images and media particularly is you want to be speaking to really one audience at a time, one message to that one audience at a time. Any more than that and it starts to get kind of a bit diluted, so that's not what we want to do. We want to be targeting our main market first. We can do other little bits and pieces afterwards for the other markets, but it's our main focus is our main market. So it's mums. So mums are going shopping. Now, what's the best way to communicate to a mum? What's in her mind? Why would she buy an apple? Or why would she buy apples? She buys apples because they're tasty, the right ones. She buys apples because they look nice, healthy snack, healthy option to a snack. So it's kind of about looking after a family a little bit, maybe it's about providing something that's good and wholesome. So maybe those kind of bits are in it. So we've said that we're going to be communicating with mums. That's the first and primary bit. We've said that, secondly, the reasons for and motivations for them wanting to buy apples are because maybe it's a healthy alternative to any other kind of sugary snack for their families. So I guess what you could do is you could, if you were talking about images and photographing that as a product, would you photograph an apple? Would you just have a static photograph of an apple? Let's have a look. Okay, so, does that work for you? Yes? No? Does it make you want to buy apples? It's a really simple question. I know it sounds really dumb, but does that photograph of an apple make you want to run out and buy apples? You have to put yourself in a mindset of a mum and you have to think really carefully about, right, okay, how would you react to this? I'm not sure. I don't think I would be drawn to buy an apple. If I was a mum, I wouldn't do it for me. So, what about if we kind of get a bit cute? What about if we get a bit cute with, our photography and we think, all right, so let's make apples cute. What about that? Does that work? It's a bit funnier. It's a bit kind of like, tongue-in-cheek, but does that make me want to run out and, buy apples? Now, the primary thing that we want to do when we're generating media for a product or a service is we want to connect the target audience emotionally to the actual product, because that's the primary way that you develop that connection, that you build a bridge, and that actually you attach your product to an emotional center of the person actually looking. That's critically important. If you don't do that bit, you've done nothing. If you don't actually connect to some part of your target customer's emotional center, then you haven't really communicated anything. So that's critically important. So what you're trying to do after you've identified the target market is you're trying to work out how to present an image, present a communication, present a message in a really, really simple, quick way that connects to an emotional part of their center. Because once you connect those two, then your product becomes primary for them. So you can be, funny. Does that work? I'm not saying that's hilarious, but that is humorous. But doesn't really work for me. You could be clever. Lots of people try and be clever. I've seen some images and that you sort of sitting there scratching your head thinking, okay, what was that about? So either that message was not meant for me, which is why I couldn't, particularly kind of connect to it, and it must be connecting to someone else, or they got it wrong. And actually, advertising, image history is full of terrible fails, absolutely terrible, huge amounts of money spent on bits of media that actually just don't work, don't connect. So it's not just the small guys that get it wrong, the big guys get it very, very wrong as well. So many advertising campaigns I can think of where they used just the wrong context, didn't communicate, they spent millions and it failed. So most of us haven't got millions to waste, so we kind of need to get it right from the beginning. So you can be too clever. I don't know if you can see that from there. Okay, that's somebody trying to be super clever, presenting their apples in a kind of contemporary fashion. Does that work? No. Does it make me want to rush out and buy a bunch of apples? No. So that don't work. So you can't be too clever because it won't connect. What about sexy? Sex is used to sell image, as far as images are concerned, everything. Sex these days, almost in every single image you see, there is some element, some sexual context, and images and media absolutely abound because everybody looks, apparently, at sexy images. But we're not talking about people just looking. We're not talking about people just looking at a piece of media, whether that's a photograph or a piece of film. It's not just about them looking. It's about them attaching themselves, an emotional reaction. So I've got another one here. This is not a particularly sexy image, but does that work for you? Does that do it for you? I don't know. She's quite cute, but it doesn't work for me either. So that's in the context of this piece of work and the apple seller, because I bet you've forgotten what we were talking about in the first place. Doesn't really work. So sex for selling apples, doesn't particularly work. So I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, and particularly because we're actually communicating with mums, and generally it's mums, not just single females. We're talking about mothers. They might have kids with them. They're concerned about their family's welfare and health. So they're not really going to be responsive, certainly in the emotional sense, to a sex image. Now, what they might respond to is something, if I can find it, what they might respond to is something like this. I don't know if you can see that. What you have here is a couple of images that I prepared that show not just the product, which is the apple, that's kind of what we want to sell more of, but it shows what you do with that apple. Much more important, much more engaging. I guess you could show someone eating an apple, but not really sure if that actually makes that connection. That makes a connection. We're still talking about apples here, but we're talking about what do you do with them, rather than here is an apple. So we're communicating by these two photographs, a kind of warm, wholesome family, mother-daughter, mother-child activity that connects all those feelings in just those two photographs, all those feelings of warmth, wholesomeness, mum doing a good job, being a good mum, all of that is communicated in an image, in an instant, in a blink. And when you start to understand that, you understand how unbelievably powerful images are in terms of connecting them to a target audience, if you get it right, and an emotional reaction and a response. So we have wholesome family apples. So that connects to me. You know, if I was a mum, I guess, and I looked at that, I might even go home. I might even go and buy some apples and go home and, you know, make an apple pie, you know, with my kids. And I mean, obviously apple pie is like, you know, just one element, one thing that you can do, and one direction you can take. But, you know, for the purpose of this demonstration, that's what I'm doing. So we've got wholesome family apples and an activity and the warmth and connection there is between a mum and her kids and, you know, and all of those lovely, warm, fuzzy feelings all in one photograph. So that works for me. So we're going to keep that somewhere. Okay. The second thing that works is this. These are apples in action. Kind of an ongoing move from what we just kind of talked about. In that it's, you know, so we've got the mum making, you know, an apple pie with her kids, which is great. And then what we've got some absolutely drop dead, beautiful, almost you can taste it photographs of apple pie. So I don't know how close you can see that, and we're going to put slides up at some point, but you can see they, especially the top one, which I did not so long ago, absolutely jumps out at you, and you can almost look at that and it makes you salivate. That's how good that particular photograph is. I'm not saying that's how good I am as a photographer, even though I am, but that particular photograph with the juice of the apples and the apple, you know, in view, and the crustiness of the pie, you can almost look at that and think, and actually almost taste it. Super powerful. So we've got the wholesome family and that kind of image which is connected to the mother. We've got the actual product that the apples produce, which is, in this case, an apple pie. The next thing that we can do in terms of getting the connection, the emotional connection between the mother and who's our target audience and the product is the actual kind of the response to what it feels like to eat an apple pie. If we're going to use the apple pie as a direct route because it's got some of those other messages and emotional connections to them. So we have a photograph like this. That's a great photograph, isn't it? If that doesn't show somebody enjoying an apple pie, I don't know what does. And again, same thing, you know, there's a kid there, you know, who's enjoying that apple pie. So it kind of connects to that whole sense that, you know, when you speak to mums about, you know, watching their kids eat, you know, a lot of parents get quite kind of, you know, they feel quite good about feeding their kids, and you know, it's that sense of fulfillment and satisfaction, a sense of completeness. There's a whole bunch of emotional contexts to just those three images I showed you. First image was the family and the mother cooking with their child, cooking an apple pie. Second image was the apple pie itself, and the third image was the apple pie being eaten in a really energetic way. Those three pictures, just three, have communicated an immense amount. And I'm sure you've just looked at those images alongside me and what I've done there and had a reaction. You would have. Most people would, because they are such evocative, powerful images. But incredibly, they're quite easy to take if you know what you're doing. So that's three images. Another thing that you can do is you can attach another sort of element to the apples, because if you want to be known as an expert, if you want your product to be synonymous, your apples are the apples. They are the apples that everybody should be using, that mums should be using, because they're so good. They're so good. Even the pros use it, and that's a very powerful kind of you know, emotional context, because what it does for mum who's going out to buy these apples is it connects her to a sense that these apples, beyond all other apples, have some sense of status. They have some level of authority, that someone somewhere is looking at these apples and saying, oh, these apples are the ones you should buy. So it kind of ties in. So what you can do then, you can have another image like this. You get yourself a chef, somebody that is quite passionate about cooking, and you connect your product or the use of your product to someone who is an expert in producing those products. So in this case, it's a chef, quite a well-known chef, who is an expert and a passionate apple pie maker, as you can see. And I guess the interesting aside to this is that that pie could actually be anything. But because we've just been talking about apple pies, your assumption is that that's an apple pie. But it might not be. It could be a beef and potato pie. Or it could be a chicken pie. But it's an apple pie. And because she's an expert, by putting herself in front of that apple pie, she has connected you as the apple seller to that product. So she's saying that I use these apples for my apple pies because they're that good. So what we've done, we'll get rid of all the other images. What we've done with just these small images is we have created, in a very short, very bullet pointed way, a whole narrative, a whole dialogue of emotions. These are not just static pictures. They say something. Each one of these images says something. As opposed to just having an apple stuck there, we have three very, very powerful pieces of media that communicate something about your apples. Now, if you attach your brand name, your Apple product to each one of those images, then you begin to create associations for people. So you associate you with these photographs, which in themselves generate a whole stack of emotions. And then what happens to the person looking at them is they make the connection. They make the emotional connection, and then they feel fuzzy and warm, not just about this picture, but they feel fuzzy and warm about your product because your product is connected to that picture. This is actually fairly standard, and it's fairly very, very well known in terms of a sort of general marketing route, is that you attach emotional context to a product or a service, because then that makes the connection between the potential customer and user far more relevant, and it's done right across the world in every type of advertising, unless they get it wrong. Now, the interesting thing is that many, many, many small businesses and some big businesses actually, because we're all busy, because we're focused on a bajillion other things, because life is difficult and whatever, we forget this bit. Now, the thing is about images is, if I was to show you the statistics for what the kind of the power that images have, either on websites, social media, even news stories, PR, all of that stuff, the statistics will blow your mind. If you are not using images in the best way you can, then you're doing your business a disservice and you're doing your products a disservice. You have to really understand that images and film is going to become a massive part of this equation, but images particularly are so fundamental to you getting your business and product out there in front of people. And the reason for that is everything I've just said. In the context of one image, you can generate a whole host of emotions. You can create a whole basket full of feelings. And if you attach your product to those basket full of feelings, then you're going to make a connection with your customer, and your customer is going to associate you with all those great feelings and will seek you out and buy your product. That's a much better way. That's a much, much better way of marketing your product, i.e. that people are looking for your product over anybody else's product, than it is, say, like, for instance, AdWords or any of those kind of other advertising kind of mediums, because all those mediums mean that you are actually shooting in a place that everyone else is shooting, and so everybody's bidding on these AdWords. Everyone is fighting for those keyword searches. So when people put that keyword search in, all they'll see is a bunch of your competitors, as well as you, of course. But your capacity to be able to kind of get some of that stuff is limited. Images, on the other hand, have the capacity to absolutely personalize you, your product, your service, and put you center stage. Now, all you've got to do is look at the stats. All you've got to do is look at how Facebook is working, Pinterest. There are so many elements to the photography side now. In fact, there's a massive PR company, PR Wire, based in the States, and they did some analysis on their statistics for people that pick up stories, that's journalists, bloggers that go through these news distributors to find news stories to add to their blogs and their sites. Don't think for a minute that people write stuff themselves. They often don't. They often literally buy into a story that's already published. The take-up is something like, if there is an image that's attached to a story, the take-up's about 80%. It is that big of a difference. So, for your website and all your promotional literature, everything that you do, the image and the images are probably almost more than the words, the most important element. You get that bit wrong, you're going to cause yourself. It doesn't matter what you've written, it doesn't matter what you say, your product will be undermined. The photography is crucial. Now, if you're smart and you're into this stuff, you'll understand that and you'll make the right connections. We, as a company, specialize in what we call relational media. Relational media is a boring term, and all it really means is here is a product. This is the market. How do we communicate to that market? Right, we're going to produce a piece of media, whether it's a piece of film, a photograph, or a series of photographs, and the end result, which is the printed material. We're going to produce that, put it together, and we're going to present it to this target market. So what we do is we look at the market really carefully. We look at who your audience, potential audience is really carefully. We understand and get into who they are, what they like, what they don't like, what they think about your product, and then we come up with a stack of images and film, which is absolutely specific. The message is specific. The image is highly tuned to them and what they are looking for. And they make the connection and the association. They run to your site. They begin to associate your product with all these lovely feelings, and you become top dog. So when they're looking for that product, they don't look for the product anymore. When they look for the product, they don't type in, where can I get some apples? They type in the name of your company because it's synonymous with the apples. So that's the kind of idea, especially these days, especially with the bajillion companies on the internet, and it's difficult to kind of get your USP, your presence out there. So what you have to do is work on becoming the person or the business that's associated with providing that particular product and service. So where are we? These days, who can afford to spend bajillions of pounds? Nobody can. There's a lot of money to be wasted if you get this piece wrong. So do you need to employ a professional to do that piece of work? Well, I'd like to say yes, because obviously that's what I do. That's what we do as a company. And of course, we want to get as many customers as we could possibly get to buy that service from us. But you know what? If you're using an iPhone, forget it. If you're paying, if your budget only stretches to a few £100, you know what? Maybe the best thing for you to do is not get a professional photographer in. Because actually, for that kind of money, will you get what you want? Will you get it the way you want it? Probably not. The best way to do it, especially these days, you can buy a camera fairly cheaply, and actually a really good camera fairly cheaply that will do the kinds of shots you need. You need a small amount of knowledge, really, not a huge amount, a small amount of knowledge and some practice and a bit of support, but not much really. And then you could produce absolutely killer images if you think about this in the right way. Or of course, you can give us a call and we'll do it for you. And actually, I've worked really, really hard in my life, as I'm sure all you guys have. And I've done a lot of stuff in business. I've been in business a long, long time. I'd like to give something back. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be running a series of offers in relation to getting your piece of work done. And what I'm going to offer that, we'll do a bit of a media makeover of your product, whatever it is, or a service. And we'll do it for next to nothing, like, 99 quid, 99 pounds. What's that in dollars? $150, something like that. We'll do a mini makeover of your product, and I'll put this guarantee in. If you use us, we'll do that piece of work. We'll do it for about £99. And if you don't think it's amazing, if it doesn't sell your product, if it doesn't tell your story, then don't pay us. It's as simple as that. You can even have it. You can even have the image. So that's kind of my guarantee. And I guess the point is once you start to use us, if that's if you can afford to do that, you're going to want to continue using us as you grow in your business. As I guess once you get to a certain point, you haven't really got the time to run around photographing your widgets and whatever else you've got, or your apples. You might want somebody else to kind of take that piece of work on. And, I guess we want to be there for that moment. So if I can help you get to the point where, you could do that piece of work initially and you could box it up and you could take a bunch of images and I can give you some support and knowledge about how to do that piece of work, really good. Then, there's a chance you're going to grow. You're going to make some business, you're going to earn some money, your business is going to get bigger. You're going to get to the point where eventually, you don't really want to be doing it anymore. You don't really want to be thinking about, having to do that piece of work. So maybe you'll give us a call at that point. And, and maybe, you'll be using us for your bigger campaigns. Maybe you'll be kind of communicating us to do, a few bits and pieces for you. So I'm going to be doing a series of these. This is the first one. It's kind of an introduction. And we're going to get more and more technical as time goes on and talk a bit more extensively about the sort of the psychology and the marketing behind some of what I've spoken about today. But in essence, and to summarize, it's actually quite easy. You have an apple seller who wants to sell more apples to his target, her target audience. Okay, we decided that target audience was females, mums. Okay, so we want a message that's going to communicate with them and motivate them to connect emotionally to your apples. So we talked about, all right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go down the familial family route. We're going to produce something with these apples so that we can pin some emotion around, the actual product. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some apple pies. And we're going to create some authority with that apple pie with mum by connecting somebody who is an expert in making things with products. And they're going to choose your apples. They're going to make a fantastic apple pie. They're going to be smiling and thinking, communicating that your apples are the only apples they use because they're brilliant. And that's why they're going with their pies. That gives your apples authority. Mum then sees the images, sees some of the images around, making these pies with your apples with their kids, and there's all sorts of warm, fluffy bits in that. And not only that, you get a great image of a kid or a family enjoying the end result of that. And it's a full circle. And you connect your brand all along the way. You connect your product all along the way, and you get delivered to the point where eventually, if you do enough of this in the right way, use your social media channels, distribute some of this material, both the posters, which we also produce, and the film and photography, whack it on your site, stick it on your Facebook pages, put it on Pinterest, tag it all back to you, and you start to become, or certainly your target audience starts to become aware that your product is connected to all those nice, warm, fuzzy feelings. It stops being just an apple and it becomes an emotion. And it fulfills a whole bunch of needs to your target audience. And at the end result of that is that they buy more apples. Thanks for stopping by. And I hope you've got something out of this presentation. Come back and see us. Drop us a line on info@sassystudios.co.uk. You can find us if you Facebook or Google Sassy Studios Suffolk. Then you'll find us, connect to us, email us, give us a call. We will do whatever we can to help you. If you're stuck on, for an image or an idea for your site, please get in touch and we'll have a chat. Bye for now.